Uh, I, I think we're live. All right. We're live. Welcome. Good morning, folks, wherever you are out there. Welcome. This is the Charge Live podcast. I'm Joseph Barletta, and this is where we discuss EVs and all things EV charging. So glad you could pull over and park with us today. So let's get plugged in. Look, today's episode's all about supercharging congestion fees. You're going to love this one today. Before we begin today's episode, it's brought to you by Smart Charge America. Since 2007, Smart Charge America has installed tens of thousands of EV charging stations nationwide, and they can do the same for you today. Whether home, commercial, service, let their team of expert installation specialists guide you on the best charging solution for your new electric car. After all, if you can't charge, you can't drive. Visit smartchargeamerica.com today to get started. Okay, Tesla's new supercharging congestion fees. Ultimately, the news broke this week. It's just a thing that they just came up with to reduce wait times and increase accessibility to supercharging by preventing kind of sort of unnecessary charging at during charging sessions. I mean, it's a testament to literally the potential supply and demand constraints in certain territories and locations across the US. And so we know that. So kind of looking at historicals, like looking back on everything that Tesla has done historically wise. I mean, you can see the summaries. I mean, they've increased the average. Let me make sure. First of all, let me make sure that everyone can hear me first and foremost, as I am live. And so, okay, looks like looks like people can hear me. Guys, if y'all can't hear me, comment please. Let me know. All right. So, in general, let's getting back to it. I mean, we know that the Tesla superchargers, they've really kind of expanded and almost increased the average number of charging stalls per site. I believe, they used to be averaging around 8. Now they're around like 12 to 16 at most locations. So you look at Tesla on what they've done to increase the number of charging stalls at site. You look at what they've done to increase the power draw, at site. Of course, they have their urban superchargers, but they also have the 150 kWs. They've been moving that up to 250 now with the version 4, 350 kWs. Really exciting. They've been spreading a lot more complementary destination chargers all over the U.S. And especially in those urban populations. You look at the added software and technology that they've not only put into their vehicles, but also into their charging platform with, routing, preconditioning, better battery chemistries and forms like the 4680s. So, when it comes to these new supercharger congestion fees, I want to make sure that everyone fully understands and can like sort of visualize the way that the charging curves happen between essentially like level 2 charging and DC fast charging or supercharging. With level 2 charging, whether it be commercial or in the home, let's say you pull up, your state of charge is at 0%. Well, it's going to really, once you plug in, it's really going to go, it's going to slowly kind of kick up to reaching its maximum charging rate. And then it's going to stay there. Let's say the first 5% is just kind of going up, and then it's going to stay there for like 95% of the time. And then around 95% state of charge, it'll slowly kind of trickle back down to make sure the battery's topped off properly at 100% state of charge. That's how level 2 charging works. It's a very simple up all the way across and down. Very up sharply all the way across, 95% down pretty aggressively. If you look at the charging curve on a DC fast charging session or on a supercharging session, specifically for Tesla, you basically have, let's say you pull into a stall at 1% state of charge. You have, once you plug in, the charging session is going to ramp up like drastically. Okay, it's going to go very high, pretty much max out, and then it's going to stay high for about 5-10% of state of charge, and then it's going to slowly kind of start to kind of decline, but it's still going to be at a really high charging rate. It's going to do that for, let's say, from 5% to maybe 50 to 40%. And then it's going to start to kind of a little taper down. And then once it hits 80%, it's really going to drop off. It drastically drops off. So some would say like first 0 to 80% you can do in like 10 minutes, 7 minutes. And 10 minutes. And then, of course, it's going to take you another 20 minutes to go from 80 to 20. So, okay, knowing how charging curves work, knowing that this is the problem and sort of the dilemma that Tesla's in, you can now see why they're implementing these things, such as these congestion fees that they talked about. So if you look at other charging providers, I mean, we've seen other charging providers, they'll like apply a certain access fee to, their parking spot. And then they'll charge you their normal charging rates on top of that. And some of them will have idle fees and so forth and so on. But it's like they're charging you a fee just to park at their spot to charge. So, they're not really concerned about behaviors and prompts and rates, so forth and so on, because they already got their money. They really already made their money. And kind of when you stretch it over the course of time, this for us, it's not the way to scale, and it's not the way to promote proper adoption of charging for a good customer experience. So if you look at the supercharger experience as a whole, these new supercharger fees, they come with some oddities, and that's what we're going to discuss right here, right now. So before, Tesla had what's called idle fees. And so the idle fee was basically a fee that triggers once a supercharging site was, let's say, 50% or more occupied, and you've reached 100% on your charging session. The rate at which those idle fees would apply is after 5 minutes of you reaching 100%, you would be charged $1 per minute by sitting there on that charging plug. And so essentially, the new congestion fee sort of replaces the idle fee. It just replaces the name, but they're still gonna assess idle fees to you. But the congestion fee is what they kind of want to name it overall, because inside the congestion fee you can go several layers that all kind of include what's considered a congestion fee. And so in this case, the Tesla would extend you a certain grace period from once you hit 100%. The grace period was about 5 minutes, and then that's when they would start to assess the actual idle fees. So the grace period generally is 5 minutes. It's a 5-minute grace period, and so when you see that 5-minute grace period, once you've hit that 5 minutes, that's when it triggers, and that's when you've reached that threshold, and that's when it starts to implement those fees. So just knowing, the trigger, okay, is once the charging station site is 50% plus occupied, and you've reached 100% state of charge on your charging session, that's when it would trigger the grace period. Now, the grace period would be 5 minutes, and then it would, bam, you would trigger the actual fee itself at $1 per minute. The congestion fee, the way that works is it's triggered when the site is busy. And this is sort of the vague, broad language that Tesla uses. It's triggered when the site is busy. And let's say that's 90% full, to be proactive and kind of like anticipating charging behavior patterns, rather than being more reactive where like we're going to implement this when the site is full. You don't want to do that when it's full, when it's 100%, because you need to get let's stay ahead of the curve here. Okay. So let's just say 90-90. That's what I say. Okay. That's when the new update inside the terms and conditions on the website and the updates, readings, they don't really give a specific percentage that the charging site has to be, and so that's how they're going to assess the congestion. The limit, they're stating with the new congestion fees that once your state of charge reaches a certain charge level, again, very vague, we don't know what that is. Perhaps it's 90%. That's why I figured 90-90. Let's just go once the supercharging site's 90% full and your session is 90% full, we're going to give you a 5-minute grace period, and then we're going to tack on a congestion fee at $1 a minute. So that way we can hurry up and rotate those charging ports and kind of keep the charging sessions going for those people that really need the charge. So, if you look at like we talked about fluid, you want to look at the vague and the broadness of the language that's used. It allows flexibility in Tesla's, application to apply different formulas to different sites based on the crowdiness, I guess, of it, or the heat of that particular site. We call them heat maps, where we have higher utilization in some areas than others. So, hey, click on that thumbs up icon if you can below. Yes, please. Just friendly reminder, thumbs up. We love you. Thanks. Looking at the visuals wise, if the congestion fee and charge limits they will be clearly displayed on the screen, inside the vehicle, and it will be clearly displayed on the app. And when you're on the map and you're looking to select a site, it's gonna let you know, hey, this site does apply congestion fees. So just kind of be wary. So those are things that you definitely can visualize and you can see ahead of time, and so you can plan your route accordingly on that, and just have that level of expectation going too. So in the end, it's all about charging etiquette, really. Tesla's doing this to try to make sure that there's enough charging sessions there to get enough people, enough juice to kind of stay on the road, right? And they don't want anyone squatting or or anything like that, or idling. They're trying to elicit behavior to maximize the utilization on each site. And so again, when it comes to charging etiquette, I always just tell my guys, look, just be courteous and just be mindful. That's all. That's all. That's it. Well, you have a whole another episode on all things charging etiquette, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it does kind of get into like the rental dilemma. So everyone knows that Tesla signed a deal with Hertz a few years ago, and of course Hertz has a deal with Uber, and so it's like, oh, and I can't tell you this, but we've gone to some cities where, let's say, EV adoption is growing. It's not like all-time max, very progressive, but it's growing. It's there. Tesla's set up supercharger sites, massive supercharger sites, 12, 16, 20 something stalls, and they are just completely full through random times throughout the day. And you go by and you start talking to these people, and you see the Hertz, you see it's a rental, you see the Uber little sign right in front of the door. These sites are being really congested based on those drivers. And so they're causing most of this during normal operating times. Okay. So we can kind of shave the behaviors from normal operating times. However, during travel holiday times, it worsens. And then of course, you know, it'll get even worse when everyone moves to that NAC standard in 2004 with adapters, and then of course 2005 with the charging ports, so forth, so on. So this is that rental dilemma, and I think Tesla's starting to feel that, and that's why they're go ahead and they're trying to impose these congestion fees. I'm all for it. They do have an intuitive predictability model that allows them, as long as you plan in your route where you're going to stop at your superchargers, it does tell you in real time. It gives you in real time forecasted use, like your anticipated wait times. And so with this, they're hoping to really drive down some of those wait times should a supercharger site be congested in all its glory. So other than that, look, if you look at the value conclusions that we have from Tesla assessing these fees, it's a smart strategy. Look, it's plain and simple. As Tesla invests more and more into the charging experience, literally releasing the Kraken, like we talked about with NACS, and the NACS access to the rest of the automotive world, they can only scale and expand so fast, of which they've been doing. They have been, and they are continuing and will continue to do a tremendous job of, more than any other company in the market or in the world at that matter. And so now they need to focus on behaviors. And if they can, if you can do both, if you can expand and scale and capture the behaviors that you're trying to elicit out of the supercharging sites, then that is what we believe the message is that they are sending with this newly applied fee to ensure the greatest driving experience for their customers, hands down. That's it. Plain and simple. That's it. That's what we know about the new Tesla Supercharger congestion fees. So, kind of with that, I wanted to take a few questions from the audience. We finally got some audience participation, which we're pretty glad. So Jan from Baltimore says, "Is this fee on top of existing idle fee? Is this fee on top of the existing idle fee?" Yes. I think I think Tesla has the congestion fee there, but should the supercharger kind of relax a little bit in its capacity and still be of that more than 50%, I think between 50% and whatever rate that they're going to assess the congestion fee on, I think they're going to assess the idle fee and continue to do that. They're just going to call the idle fee maybe a congestion fee, or you're going to have the congestion fee and you're going to have an idle fee on top of that. So maybe they're two separate things, but Tesla is introducing the congestion fee there specifically for that reason, for when that supercharging site is like really crowded. The idle fee is to make sure that it doesn't get to that point as fast, maybe, and so they don't want anyone really idling on those chargers because they know that if you look into pulling into those slots in a sequenced order, we call it sequencing. When you go to, you got, A, B, C, and D, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4 of each one. Well, you want to make sure that you're kind of paying attention to, if someone's parked in A1, well, then you go park in B1 or C1. Don't park in A3 right next to them or A2 right next to them when you have the rest of the supercharging slots available. The sequencing and just understanding how the supercharger works there, that definitely could help. So that is it, Jan. I hope I answered your question. But yeah, I think this is a fee on top of the existing. Like you're not going to get charged double. It's just it's one or the other. I don't think Tesla's going to charge you like, double dip on you, but it's just one or the other, like we talked about. Okay. Carlos out of Miami. Will these fees be assessed across all levels of supercharging? 72 kW, 150, 250, and now 350. Oh. Will these fees be assessed across all levels of supercharging? I don't. Tesla in their release notes, they did talk about select sites. So strategically wise, I wouldn't imagine that they would do that on urban, the 72 or the 150s, just because like if you're a Model Y and you have a 250 kW max on your on your supercharging speeds and you pull up to 150, it's going to take you a little bit longer. You're going to have to sit at that on that supercharger for a little bit longer to reach your capacity that you need to be able to make your trip. And so like that leaves you with having to sit there longer, and what, you're going to penalize somebody for sitting there for 55 minutes when they had to sit there for 50 minutes? Like, I really don't see that happening. I mean, I do see that they are more inclined to, on a strategy level, to implement these fees. And that's why they're select. That's why the language is broad, so forth and so on. And Tesla's choosing to strategically select where they apply these fees to certain supercharger sites. My best guess would be that they do apply these to version 2 and version 3 superchargers, the 250 kW and the 350 kW superchargers, because that way those are higher powered superchargers and they're able to reach those certain charge levels faster, so we can hurry up and rotate those charging ports and keep the utilization high to make sure that everyone enjoys the power that they actually absolutely need, and they're not sitting on that drastic elongated curve, from 80 to 20 that they otherwise unnecessarily wouldn't need to. So yeah, that's a really good question. All right. Third question, Ross from Austin. Ross, thanks for asking. Let's see here. What if your trip planner warrants you to stay at the charger longer to reach the capacity you need to complete your trip? Will Tesla apply the congestion fee then? Okay. Oh, yeah, this is good. I've actually had trips where there was like a large desert, in between one supercharger to another. And literally the supercharger says, you need to fill up 100%. Like, we're not taking any chances, with weather and weight and friction and all of that stuff. You need to be absolutely at 100% in order for you to continue. But I already have that trip mapped out. So yeah, this is a really good one. If you have that trip mapped out already and you pull up to that supercharger spot and that supercharger spot has congestion fees, and there's not another means of you being able to plug into another supercharger en route, from lily padding from one to another, I would imagine that you should be able to get some sort of. But then again, it's like you're in a crunch. You need that, so you'd be willing to pay $1 per minute, as a result of that supercharger state, kind of site being completely crowded and congested. I mean, yeah, like that might be the penalty. I don't think that Tesla would have the ability to, like, all right, you're excused because you have that route into your trip planner. Or maybe they could. Maybe they say, look, if you're on a trip and you've traveled more than 100 miles, and your destination's a little bit further and you need to, then go ahead. But I would imagine some people would try to avoid the congestion fees by just hurrying up and trying to like route somewhere that's like, it's, the farthest way that they can get to try to get around the fees. Still, all in all, really good question. That was tough. Ross, you got me, man. I would say the Tesla would not omit. If you have to sit there for another 10 minutes, you're most likely going to have to pay another $10 for that. And that's just a supply and demand problem because that supercharger site is completely full and they gotta rotate. So the thing is that they're going to rotate others because others are going to be more inclined to get off the plug because they don't need to go as far as you do. But since you do have to go that far, it's like it's on you. You know, you would have to pay that fee. So that's my interpretation of it. Look, thank you guys so much. Thank you to our audience members, our listeners, our subscribers. Thank you so much for your time. I hope this episode has brought just a little more value to your day. You know, look, I know we're all better for it. I love you. And yes, we cannot do this show without you. So again, we appreciate you joining us today. Go ahead and click the thumbs up icon below, share, subscribe, comment. You know the Googles and the tutorials to do on our channel if you think we earned it. Thanks again for charging up with us today. Keep in mind, you can always find us at smartchargeamerica.com. And remember, folks, if you can't charge, you can't drive. We will absolutely see you on the next one. Cheers.